something must have snapped, or he snapped.
He told me there was 4 things that he wanted to do. 1 was bank robbery, 2 was auto theft, 3 was rape, and 4th was murder.
If you didn't know that somebody was like that, you thought it was just him being stupid or being silly.
Welcome to Season 1, Episode 1 of Dark Case Serial Killers. This is the disturbing case of William Clyde Gibson. Viewer discretion is advised for this educational documentary. Here at Dark Case Documentaries, I bring you true crime, disturbing stories and other things that you may later regret knowing with regular uploads every week. So make sure that you hit subscribe and turn on notifications. Everyone in the Dark Case family should already know the importance of protecting your privacy, identity and sensitive information online. And that's why I'm excited to partner with Surfshark VPN to bring you today's video. You see, Surfshark VPN keeps your online identity completely private. This means your personal data is protected from big companies and cybercriminals. Both are equally as scary. Surfshark VPN also allows you to appear as though you're accessing the internet from pretty much anywhere in the world. This handy feature allows me to carry out the research I need to bring fresh cases to you, the Dark Case family. A lot of the smaller cases in America are featured only in local newspapers, which cannot be accessed from the UK. With Surfshark VPN, I can set my location to any US city and then unlock the wealth of information held within exclusively local media outlets. Or you can use Surfshark VPN to stream amazing true crime content on Netflix and beyond. You know, the really good stuff that isn't available to view in your country. You can choose from over 3,200 servers in over 100 countries. By using my exclusive code, DARKCASE, all one word, you can now save 83% and get 3 months extra totally free. Surfshark VPN offers a 30-day money-back guarantee too, so there's no risk to just give it a try. Just click the link below in the description. So thank you to Surfshark VPN and thank you Dark Case family. William Clyde Gibson III was born on October 10th, 1957 to father William Gibson Junior and mother Jeraline or Geri Gibson. He was the baby of the family, having 3 older siblings. Father William Junior worked as a foreman at a tree trimming business. Mother Geri worked at Sears, a department store. William Clyde Gibson was born in Raleigh, North Carolina and lived there until he was 2 years old. The family then moved to New Albany, Indiana. There was no notable trauma or maltreatment during William's childhood. In fact, he later said himself,
I had a good childhood. I mean, everybody thinks when you do the type of stuff I done, cutting them up and, you know, all that kind of egregious stuff, they think automatically, for some reason, that it's because you had a bad childhood, you were molested, or you asked you if you started fires and all this stuff. I didn't do none of that.
He also claimed that at times he was outright spoiled, much like many other youngest children. There were some occasions where his father, William Jr., who was in fact an alcoholic, could become aggressive and combative in the household when he was inebriated. However, William didn't think this had any lasting effect on him. William's memory of his childhood, though, may not have been 100% accurate, or perhaps he was just being untruthful. He did in fact struggle at school, both academically and socially. It was said that a young William had trouble speaking with others, both students and adults. Rather than focus on his education, he much preferred to stay at home with his mother when possible. One of the reasons why he may have wanted to stay at home could be the fact that he was bullied by other children. He was known as the weird kid at his school. He was very much the victim until he reached 11 years old, at which point he realized he was big enough to defend himself. But he took it further than that and became the bully himself. This was the start of a downward slide that would continue continue for the next 40 years into the depths of depravity. William's new identity as a bully was not conducive with growing into an upstanding member of society. He would disregard what teachers and authority figures asked of him. He would speak through classes, and would often now get into physical altercations with his peers. His bad behaviour though would not stop at the school gates and spilled over into his outside life. A childhood friend, Melody Schultz, claimed that she saw William hit another youth in the eye with a projectile from a pellet gun. Things began to escalate in a downward spiral for William, in what could be related to behaviour that he witnessed from his father. At the age of 13, William began to drink alcohol, and falling further later that same year, he would steal a motorbike. For this, he would receive his first arrest. William continued down a similar route until fully committing himself to a life of crime after dropping out of school. Probably his most serious crime during this period was stealing a car and driving it whilst under the influence of alcohol. He was arrested once again. This, perhaps with direction from his family, would be a turning point in his life. Just 2 weeks after this arrest, William, now 18, joined the US Army and was shipped out to a base in Germany. During his time in the army, he received badges for marksmanship and for grenade usage, among others. There were glimmers of a new man emerging. Perhaps his bad behaviour was a symptom of adolescence that was now past. But no, it wasn't. Obviously. William developed addictions and dependency on both alcohol and pretty much every illicit substance you can think of. And then, in an event that echoed the reason he even joined the army in the first place, at 22 years old, he was dishonourably discharged from the army after once again stealing a car. He was also landed with 1 year in prison at Fort Leavenworth. Here he made an attempt on his own life while locked in his cell, but obviously was not successful. After his release from prison, William had yet another chance at a new life. At the age of 32, he met and married an artist in June of 1980. There's not too much information on what kind of relationship this was. True artists are often very understanding, and although this is purely conjecture, perhaps this is how they ended up together. However, things would once again not continue in a positive direction for very long. During this marriage, William would discover that he was infertile. This seemed to push him over a precipice that he would never be able to climb out of. His frustrations would now be taken out on those around him, and he would now up his illicit substance use. He would be using THC over 20 times per day at this stage. By January 1991, William had still not become an upstanding member of society. Whilst driving his pickup truck, he was in a collision with another vehicle. A police officer that was nearby attended the scene and inspected the vehicles. William didn't like this and didn't want to face the consequences of his actions, so he recklessly sped off. Police took chase of William and a high-speed chase ensued. Predictably, he crashed once more into another vehicle. This accident left the driver of the other car in a critical condition, suffering from 8 broken ribs. William didn't quite get away scot-free here. He too needed medical attention, including stitches on his head. Just 8 months after this, William would escalate his behaviour once more. It's worth noting that he was still married to his wife at this point. He would rob and intimately violate a 21-year-old woman in a phone box in Louisville, Kentucky. The case went to trial and William's defense lawyer claimed that his client was suffering from mental illnesses, saying that these issues were so extreme that he requested a competency evaluation. This was something that the court allowed. They ordered an evaluation from psychologist J. Robert Noonan. The results of the evaluation were quite revealing. William Clyde Gibson had an IQ of just 79, less than that of a dolphin. However, he didn't have any identifiable mental illnesses. This was just a man that didn't want to take responsibility for his actions. He blamed his substance issues for the things that he did. William faced a normal trial after being found competent. He accepted an Alford plea. This is a plea of guilty containing a protestation of innocence. Due to this, he was sentenced to just 7 years in prison. This, however, was the final straw for his wife, the couple now divorced. In prison, William was given the option to partake in a rehabilitation for his crime. However, as always, he refused to admit that he was responsible for the crime, thus making him ineligible for it. During his incarceration, he was generally obedient. He didn't get involved with the trouble that is all too often common in prison. He also took this time to earn a degree in art. Yet another chance for him to change his life. Undergoing further psychiatric assessments revealed that William showed signs of poor judgment as well as losing control over his actions. On April 5th, 1999, William Clyde Gibson was released from prison. At this stage, he was also added to the Indiana offenders registry, and showing that there really is someone for everyone, William met and started dating Kelly Bailey.
We just happened to been in the same department on the same shift, second shift.
It was back in 1999 when Kelly Bailey says a friendly relationship at work with Clyde Gibson became something more.
He was talking to me a lot, and finally, like a stupid person, I gave in to him.
Bailey says they started dating and quickly moved into a trailer together in Starlight, Indiana.
I said, well, we'll give it a shot and see what happens. Lo and behold, if I knew what I was going to get into right then and there, I don't think I would have done it.
The relationship was short-lived, however. Once more, William started using illicit substances and worsening his behaviour. Kelly broke off the relationship and left him to his own devices. William wasn't ready to let go, and later that same year, Kelly filed a report against him. Whilst she was out delivering papers, William trapped her with his car and struck her repeatedly. He then, predictably, stole her car and left. Kelly was left with visible facial injuries, but this event didn't end in any charges due to a lack of evidence.
He told me there was 4 things that he wanted to do. 1 was bank robbery, 2 was auto theft, 3 was and 4th was murder. If God had done something once, he would do it over and over again. If he got away with it in 2002, he would still be doing it.
William didn't take getting away with this crime as a chance to go straight though. The very next year, he stole a Harley-Davidson motorbike and was subsequently sentenced to 3 years in prison. This punishment, however, allowed William to spend half of his sentence in a hospital for treatment of his multiple substance issues. But once more, William refused to engage in the treatment programs. During his incarceration though, he was diagnosed with bipolar disorder and was medicated for it with Seroquel. From March 12, 2002, he was transferred to the Floyd County Jail. Later in 2002, at the age of 45, William had served out his sentence and was once more released from prison. On the 10th of October 2002, clearly having not removed alcohol from his life, William was drinking in a bar in Jeffersonville. There, he met a 44-year-old beautician named Karen Hodella. She normally lived in Port Orange, Florida, but was visiting her boyfriend in the area. The two got talking and moved from bar to bar until the time came to go home. They then travelled to an apartment complex in New Albany. Both inebriated, an argument broke out and started to escalate. Karen believed that William had stolen some of her prescription medication. William didn't like being accused. The disagreement turned physical and Karen was struck in the face multiple times. William then made a bad situation so much worse. He pulled out a sharp implement from his pocket and plunged it repeatedly into the neck area. Karen was no longer breathing. William then moved her body into his car and drove around Clarksville looking for a location to dump the body. The location he chose was a wooded area alongside the Ohio River. He left Karen's body in the dirt and carried on with his life as if nothing had happened. William, showing a disturbing amount of confidence and feelings of untouchability, obtained a permanent souvenir of his actions. In the days after ending Karen's life, he got a tattoo of a sharp implement along with the date that he committed the crime.
Rayborn says the 45-year-old's body was so badly decomposed it was difficult to determine a cause of death. But for the first time, we're hearing details about how Karen was killed and why. We talked to her sister in Florida, who was given more details by police about what happened that night.
They left the bar. They got into an argument. Apparently, he stole something from my sister, and my sister told him she wanted it, and they got into an argument. She smacked him across the face. He supposedly pulled out a knife and stabbed her in the neck 2 times, and she died instantly.
Many years later, William had this to say about the event. I just felt like it. I didn't have to have a reason. I don't believe I've got any humanity. It just doesn't seem to affect me. I could end a person and then just go out for dinner. I don't care. Later that month, William once again was arrested for driving under the influence. After his arrest, he underwent a 4-day withdrawal process and was once more examined by the prison psychiatrist. They found no major issues other than substance issues and antisocial behaviours. He was not given his Seroquel for his previously diagnosed bipolar disorder. Whilst he was incarcerated, Karen's remains were discovered less than 3 months later in January 2003. Her condition by this time was so poor that identification had to be made via thumbprints from an historic arrest. Nobody other than William knew how or why Karen ended up where she did. Although incarcerated, William was free to carry on with his life. And just a few months later, he tried to sue the prison due to him not being given his Seroquel. The case was thrown out and labelled as baseless. In 2006, once more a free man, William had yet another opportunity to go straight. Would he take it? What do you think? Once more, he was hitting the bars and getting up to no good. On the 21st of February 2006, now nearing 50 years old, William continued his one-man crime spree. He stole a purse from someone described as a female acquaintance. The woman told her boyfriend about what happened and he tracked William down by his brown-coloured Toyota. William was once more arrested and sent to prison for 3 years for theft. He was released in July 2009. This time it seemed like he really was ready to make a change. People were ready to give him a chance to fix his life. He was given a job at C&C Flooring in Borden. There his co-workers described him as a diligent worker. His neighbours and new friends saw a convict gone good. He was looking after his mother who was falling into ill health. William also began attending a Power of the Cross church and even partook in extracurricular activities. He became known by the congregation for making small papier-mâché figurines for the church. However, William was a man of two halves. Yes, he was working and was attending church, but he was still hitting up the bar scene on a very regular basis. Other patrons of the bar didn't see him as a positive person. They described him as weird and would keep an eye on his behaviour. He would regularly try to get women to go home with him. This was said to be seldom successful. William pretty much held it together for the next 3 years, all while sitting on his dark secret regarding Karen Hodella. However, as his mother's health declined, he stopped attending church. In August 2011, Mother Geri was moved into a nursing home, and 5 months later, on January the 18th, 2012, she succumbed to her age and illness. All the positive aspects of William's life ended as if a switch was turned off. Remember, William was the youngest of 4 siblings and would often skip school to hang out with his mother. His mother's passing was a devastating blow. Just a few weeks later, on March the 24th, William was once more hitting the bars and hitting them hard. He was now 55 and met 35-year-old Stephanie Marie Kirk at the Uptown Bar in New Albany. Stephanie had separated from her partner and father of her daughter, who was now 13 years old. At this time, both she and her daughter lived with her father, Tony Kirk. He convinced her to go on a motorbike ride with him. The two spent the day together, partaking in illicit substances and intimate acts. They went back to his house and a predictable pattern once more emerged. The two argued over prescription medication that had gone missing at some point earlier in the day. Things escalated quickly once more. William throttled Stephanie before committing an act of violation. An act that was so vicious, Stephanie suffered a broken back. Once no longer breathing, William dragged her into his garage where she lay for 2 days. On the 3rd day, she was buried in the back garden. The hole was just 3 feet deep, positioned next to his porch. It was too small for Stephanie to properly fit in. William had to use brute force to make her fit. That, for him, was the end of the situation, and it was time for him to move on. For the next 3 weeks, William went about his new normal life that revolved almost entirely around bars and illicit substances. On April the 18th, Christine Wittis, 75 years old, was described as a vibrant woman and a beloved friend of his late mother, a woman that babysat William when he was a young child, paid a visit to the apparently mourning William. She acted as a kind of surrogate mother to him after Geri passed. Christine gave William emotional support and showed real care for her best friend's son. She even gave him money to keep him afloat. I find it quite sad that this elderly woman was giving him money, and he would have just wasted it in bars and on illicit substances. As the two spoke, an inebriated William was overcome with thoughts of his mother in her final days. He flew into a rage and placed his hands around the neck of Christine. Struggling to breathe, Christine devastatingly said to him, "Your mom's watching you." Something that William later said he too believed was true. But this wasn't enough for him to stop. He committed acts of intimate violation before she breathed her final breath. He removed part of her right chest and placed it in the central console of her own minivan. Christine was then moved into the garage of his home, surrounded by trash bags. William, though, didn't want to let any of this ruin his good time. He went out to the Tumbleweed Bar and then on to Shooter's Saloon in New Albany. 2 friends of William's later returned back to his home after the bars closed and drank whiskey. They had no idea that Christine was in the garage or Stephanie was in a shallow grave in the garden. The after party slowly fizzled out. The house that William was living in was the old family home. He had taken it on after Mother Geri passed away. However, this was part of an estate that all 3 of his siblings were entitled to as well. The day after Christine met her end, one of William's sisters visited the house in order to begin dividing the assets that they were owed. Upon entering the house, she witnessed something that must have appeared to be a living nightmare. First believing she was looking at a mannequin, she saw Christine, partially clothed, surrounded by vital fluids, with her legs bent unnaturally, propped up on trash bags. She contacted the police immediately, who sped to the scene. Authorities arrived at 3 p.m. on April the 19th. The attending officer said that it appeared Christine's back was broken. Near the body were multiple trash bags and a chainsaw, leading police to believe the body was soon to be disposed of. Retrieving Christine's phone revealed that a call was made from William's home at around the time she was thought to have passed. Missing from the scene was Christine's blue minivan. You probably could have guessed it, and yes, William stole it and took it for a drive. He was pulled over at Walmart on Grant Line Road and arrested. Inside the van was a scene described by police as disturbing. Remember what he was storing in the central console. Upon searching the home, the remains of Stephanie Kirk were also found. William Clyde Gibson admitted to the ending of Karen Hodella, Stephanie Kirk, and Christine Wittis. He led police to the location that Karen was previously found. Police had their man.
Investigators were back at this home once again earlier today, and there was evidently so much evidence inside the home they had to bring in this enormous storage unit to keep it all on lockdown while this investigation continues. Police, of course, have already linked Gibson to the bodies of 3 women, and they are not ruling out the possibility that there are more victims. Few people are more shocked than Gibson's boss for the past 18 months.
People hire bad people all the time, and they don't know until that evil comes out. Didn't know about all this stuff. All I knew is that he was an older gentleman. It's hard to find work out there. So I was giving him a chance. I guess his mannerisms were different from what I was used to seeing. He said some odd things, but I just...
Like what?
Just odd things.
King would only say those things were sexual in nature.
If you didn't know that somebody was like that, you thought it was just him being stupid or being silly.
But Gibson also started skipping work, and for that, King fired him about a month ago.
Gibson would face several trials. On October the 25th, 2013, he would be found guilty for the murder of Christine Wittis. Jurors took just 20 minutes to return a verdict. The following month, he was sentenced to corporal punishment. His response to the judge: no big deal.
Mike White has had few words after seeing a death sentence handed down to his mother's killer.
All I'd like to say is that I think justice was served here today, and I'm going to let the prosecutor do all the speaking for me.
If White had hoped to hear "I'm sorry" from William Clyde Gibson, he left disappointed. Gibson addressed the court against the advice of his attorneys. He didn't apologize or proclaim his innocence, but said, quote, "I deserve what I'm getting. It ain't no big deal to me."
To avoid a lengthy trial regarding the Karen Hodella case, he pled guilty to murder. This deal was made under the agreement that the case wouldn't be mentioned in any further trials. Clearly no longer really caring and knowing he would never see freedom again, at this time William made the decision to get Death Row ×3 tattooed on the back of his head. Talk about a job stopper. He pled guilty for the crimes against Stephanie Kirk too.
I'm just glad it's over and he can't hurt nobody else.
With just a few words, Delana Dean has comforted. Judge Susan Orth sentenced the man who killed her only sister to death. Her father can now begin his healing process.
Maybe now I can clean out her room a little bit and put some things in order, and we can go forward a little bit. So, doesn't bring her back, but at least she's got justice.
It all started for Tony Kirk back in 2012 when his 35-year-old daughter Stephanie Kirk went missing. He still had hopes of finding her alive, until a few weeks later when New Albany police found her remains in Clyde Gibson's backyard.
At his third and final trial on August 15th, 2014, William Clyde Gibson once more received a sentence of corporal punishment. In the following months and years, William made many appeals against his corporal punishment. All of his appeals, though, were rejected. Over the years, he has also taken part in many podcasts and interviews. It was during these that he confessed to 30 additional murders. He claimed they were committed across multiple states.
This is where they brought Mr. Gibson out here yesterday.
It was here in this steep wooded area where Mike Missy says his former tenant Clyde Gibson himself led detectives. His property belongs to Mike, and he says he was here when Gibson gave a startling confession.
When he was up here, he just said, "I know that there's two bodies down there." It's like he wanted to find them. Now, if he meant that, I mean, if that is true, I don't know, but that's how he said it. He says he's buried two people here with their identifications, everything in a plastic bag, and he buried them 4 foot deep.
Mike says Gibson lived in a trailer close to these woods with his girlfriend from mid-99 to 2000. In fact, detectives were also digging where Gibson's backyard would have been. It's an extensive search Mike is starting to question.
I'm beginning to get the feeling here today that maybe there isn't anything there. But I'm not for sure how far of an area they've covered and how much longer they're going to pursue it.
One notable confession was that of the ending of Elizabeth Bannister in Evansville in the year 2000.
Elizabeth Bannister was found stabbed to death in her Washington Avenue apartment back in January of 2000. Bannister's sister, Sarah Stewart, tells us a private investigator has been helping her look into Elizabeth's death. Now, the name of the serial killer has not yet been released. Stewart says more information is expected to come to light in the coming weeks. The Evansville Police Department could not be immediately reached for comment.
However, no additional charges have so far been brought against him. Now aged 65, William Clyde Gibson is incarcerated in Indiana State Prison, Michigan City, Indiana. He will never see freedom again. Thank you once again to Surfshark VPN for helping out with today's video. Click the link in the description and use code DARKCASE, all one word, for 83% off, plus 3 months extra free. Do you think the punishments fit the crimes here? What do you think could be done to avoid something like this happening again in the future? Let me know down in the comments. Please do hit like if you appreciate what I'm doing here. Thank you to everyone in the Dark Case crew. You too can become a channel member for just 99p. And a huge thank you to my patrons. Your support makes a massive difference. You too can support my work and be thanked in every video for just $5 per month. So thank you to Rachel David, Kathy Green, David James, Addie Alexander, Karen Jones, El Palmieri, James Harrington, Shane Woodward, Faster River, Stacey Krogerus, Summer Chambers, Mona Corona, Cepheid Variable, Anthony Watson, Jason Coward, Guardian Paler, Jeremy Sebranek, Joy Burton, Dawn Crook, Michelle Mims, and Darlene. Be careful out there, and I'll see you soon.